Hello, everyone. Mike from Dynamic Point. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or afternoon. Today, we're going to be looking at cloud-based OCR with Office 365, specifically its integration with our invoice automation product. I think we have about a minute before the top of the hour here, so I'll give it a little bit more time and then we'll go ahead and get started. And again, thank you everyone for joining. All right, according to my clock here, we're showing top of the hour, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We have a fair amount to get through today. Today will take us a half an hour or just thereabouts. Thank you again for giving me your time today. I do appreciate it. The agenda for today is that we are looking at cloud-based OCR and specifically its integration with Office 365 products and how it could work for invoice automation with our EasyAP product. Couple little housekeeping things. I will do my best to look at the questions as we're going through it. So feel free to chat any questions in that question dialogue there, and I will do my best to pause as we're going through it and answer anything that comes up. So with no further ado, we'll go ahead and get through it. My name is Mike Marson. I head up business development for Dynamic Point. So we're going to do a little bit of an introduction here, and then we'll get right to the content for today. So just a quick slide introducing who the heck Dynamic Point is and what it is that we do. So Dynamic Point, we create apps on top of Office 365. And I'm assuming everyone on this call is fairly familiar with Office 365. Basically, in addition to the standard sort of products that we all come to know over the years, such as PowerPoint and Outlook and things like that, Microsoft with Office 365 includes some enterprise products such as workflow and reporting. And in addition to that, they provide a whole ecosystem for companies like us to create applications within that framework. And the best analogy that I've been able to come up with for those who are not familiar with that framework is it's very similar to like a mobile platform, right? We've all installed apps on our mobile phone before. Asks us various questions like, can it use our camera? Can it use my location and things like that? And that is essentially the app, of course, using this framework that's being provided by the mobile platform, whether it's an iPhone or Android or whatever. And essentially we are doing that same thing, but we're living within this business framework of Office 365. So we are leveraging that platform wherever we can, using this framework to make our products, not only more functional, but leverage what you use or already own, I should say, to make it more affordable as well. We've been around a little bit longer than Office 365, so we used to create products on top of SharePoint, and about 8 years or so ago, began moving everything over to that new framework. So that's a brief history on us. As far as our product lineup, we have a customer, vendor, and employee portal app that basically takes a SharePoint extranet and includes integration with ERP and CRM data and reports. We have an employee expense management application that, obviously for the reimbursement of employees on incidentals. Neither of those are the scope of today. Today's scope is looking at the invoice automation, but not so much focused on our app, but how I could use Office 365 in conjunction with these cloud-based OCR tools. So at the tail end of today, we'll look a little bit of how our app and how it sort of works with these various technologies, but the first and the primary focus today is how I could use cloud-based OCR just with Office 365 technologies, and we'll walk through an example there. So enough about us, a little bit about our approach and how these tools are working and some of the tools that I'll be covering today. So we create apps within this ecosystem, but again, there's all these tools that are our framework or our ecosystem of products that are enabling these solutions. And our apps are basically deployed to SharePoint, and SharePoint is really providing the framework, or the front end, if you will. It's where documents are stored. In this case, we'll be looking at storing invoices there. It's the security associated to it. You know, if anything, it's Microsoft's go-to as far as a repository for not only data, but documents. They give us another tool here for workflow by the name of Power Automate. That's very handy for not only routing invoices for review and approval, but what we're going to see today is I could take invoices and route them, or I should say, submit them to a cloud-based OCR tool and get the results back there too. So we're going to look at how I could use Power Automate to integrate Office 365 with various OCR providers. Power Apps and Forms, these are different, you know, app and form technologies that we could leverage to create such things as like a check request, submission, or a mobile upload of an invoice. In addition to doing a mobile upload, we could also, you know, require certain fields and have certain logic that's provided by these platforms. And then last but not least, Power BI is the sort of go-to reporting tool for Microsoft. Now that all this data is in Office 365, we could use some of that to begin looking at reports and things like that. All right, so that's just a little bit about the tools that we'll be using. Let's get to business here on OCR. So a few definitions just to catch everyone up, right? So the concept of a web OCR, right, I'm on this first bullet right here, is basically a cloud OCR tool that is being offered as a service. And there are numerous providers out there that offer one. I'm going to be showcasing one today, but there are several options for you to choose from. And this requires no install, right? And that's one of its advantages. And basically the way it works is I could upload a document. The cloud-based service will then extrapolate the key fields, and then it's going to return the results to me through basically a web service call. And we could show you how it gets those results and how it passes those back to me. So as opposed to the old days, I used to have to install OCR, have it on a server and whatever else, and create templates and do all kinds of fun things like that. This cloud service is basically this, web-based service that I could submit it to, and then it performs OCR and then immediately gives me back the results. So that obviously has been growing in steam for the past 10, 20 years. It's nothing new, but it is much gaining power as the tools and the artificial intelligence aspect of it becomes more powerful. So within OCR, there's a couple competing technologies, and there's several, but the two main ones are this concept of zonal OCR. And zonal OCR, you can almost think of it as like a plot map, right? And I have an image, what represents like an invoice or any type of document. And I want to have a template, like a vendor template, that looks for various zones or areas on that document for key information, right? So if the invoice number on a document is always in the upper right, it knows to look in that area, and nature of it being in the standard format, it knows, quote unquote, where to get the information from. And these have been around for a long time. A very powerful tool, a little bit, effort in setting it up because I have to create vendor templates, and if my vendor changes their invoice format, of course, I have to go adjust that. Along comes, machine learning OCR, and this is towards the realm of artificial intelligence. I don't know if I would, say it's quite quote unquote there yet, but the concept here is that you're using a template-free, environment where the data is digitized. In other words, something that's buried in an image or a PDF is turned into something searchable. It's searched, and then with keyword matching and data processing rules, I could begin extrapolating the information from that document. So the beauty of this is I don't rely on templates anymore. If someone submits an invoice, I, provide it to this service, and it's going to provide its rules and give me the results without me having to define, various vendor formats and locations on documents where the data is that I'm trying to extrapolate. So moving forward, comparing these two, what's the benefits, right? Zonal, one of the biggest benefits is you have full control, right? You get to define your templates. And with that comes a lot of power. I can extrapolate information that's maybe non-standard. If I'm a paint company and someone's submitting an invoice to me that has a color of a paint or something like that that's very specific to my industry, I could create templates for obtaining that information. And something of that, level of detail is probably not going to be included on a machine learning OCR platform. So that's the one huge, advantage there. On the machine learning side, there's a lot, right? And by no means am I advocating one or the other. They both have their advantages in sort of time and place. The machine learning, I could learn now from all of my customers, trial and errors. In other words, there's a feedback loop there that if OCR does not perform successfully, then, I can submit that feedback loop. And by submitting that feedback loop, it takes that into the model. So the next time that comes around, it should be better. So easy to set up, install. There is no vendor templates. So that in itself is a huge advantage because vendor templates are quite a lot of maintenance, and depending on how many vendors you're doing business with, that could be a lot of effort to set those up. So those are the advantages of this, right? Is it's very much more of a black box. I submit an invoice to there, it gives me the results. Zonal is typically within my control. And I got one question there regarding foreign languages. So of the various OCR tools that I've used, they have a list of languages that are supported. And by translating this invoice, into something digital or any document for that matter, it's going to try to recognize that language. And by recognizing that language, then it's going to extrapolate that key information. Of the tools, again, I think they support various languages, quite a few of the ones I've seen. Most of my experience is probably in English and Spanish, just given North America based, but those seem to do quite well for those languages. I can most certainly give you a link here that you could try it out for different languages if you have invoices in various languages and see how it does. So. All right, now let's talk about these two types and how we want to integrate those with Office 365, right? So we're going to start off really simple. And I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to open up a SharePoint site. And on this SharePoint site, I'm going to navigate to a simple library. And my simple library here is called Invoice Upload. Now, this is pretty much just your basic SharePoint library, but I've pre-configured a couple columns here. And the couple columns are things that I care about extrapolating when I submit invoices into this library, right? So this library is going to become my repository for invoices that are coming into the system. So as opposed to them, being buried somewhere in a file share or email, I want the central repository for collecting AP invoices. And when they receive here, I want to, get this key data out of these invoices using OCR. So I want to capture maybe the company name, the invoice number, the amount, the date, PO number, etc., from those invoices and have them in columns as opposed to buried in an attachment. So I'm going to do, there's various ways that I could get a attachment or invoice into this library. Probably the more popular, of course, is a vendor emailing it. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and just upload one. So I could drag and drop it. So I have my Windows Explorer over here, and I will grab a simple invoice. And it's a PDF, and just bring it over here. And voila, it's uploaded, right? So nothing too special there. Now I have my invoice in this central repository. So what's going on in the background though is the fact that that invoice was uploaded, it's now kicking off a OCR process. And this document, this invoice, is being submitted to a cloud-based OCR tool, and it's going to populate the columns with the results of this data. So I'm going to show you the Power Automate flow that handles that. Really quick, I'm going to refresh because it should be coming in shortly here. Oh, all right, so there we go. So before I go show you the workflow, let's look at the results, right? So it looks like it got the invoice number, the amount, the date, it got the PO number associated to it. And now I have all this data here in columns, and I could, begin using that for further processing, whether it be account assignment or whether it be workflow and things like that. I could start using this because it's no longer just buried in an image, but it's now true, metadata that exists in columns. So we could look at how it did, right? It got the invoice number. It got the price total pretty good. It got the due date. All of that looks good. It got the purchase order. So it did a pretty good job on this invoice. So before I show you the workflow, let's talk about how the cloud-based OCR is managing this. So let's go ahead and open up a link here. And I'm going to give you a method that you could try your own, right? So if you go to our website, you just simply go to Invoice Automation. And you scroll down to the very, very, very bottom in the question and answers. There's a little question here saying, how well does OCR work? And if you click this link, it'll provide you a redirect to the cloud-based OCR tool that we typically bundle with our application. Someone asked the question, can you use the zonal or the machine learning with our product? You can. We're not really attached to one invoice OCR tool or another. I just really like this one and have really good luck with it. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to demonstrate it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another invoice. So I'll grab a different one. And I'm going to say I'm not a robot. Uh-oh, timed out. I'm going to have to refresh my screen and do that again. Sorry. And you could see it's processing that file. That's my information here. We'll go ahead and fill that out and show me the results. Okay, so the left is my image, the right is what OCR was able to recognize. And you can see here, it got the vendor name, it got the address pretty good, it got the phone number, the category. So it took that vendor and tried to categorize it, got the invoice number, the date, the bill to, as well as it recognized the line items as well for a total of $110. So this is the pretty view of it. If you click the other tab, you actually get the raw data. And that raw data, all of these tags that you see here are all of the different options of fields that have been successfully extrapolated from that invoice that now I could capture and return to that library within SharePoint, right? So I have all this data. This is what this cloud-based tool is providing me. And now I could write this information back to that library. So let's talk about how you do that. Easily stated, it's a workflow. So here is Power Automate. And I'm just gonna go ahead and edit this guy really quick. And you can see here, it is kicked off by a simple action when a file is created. So Power Automate is the workflow tool that is monitoring that library. And what's gonna happen is anytime a file is created in that library, it is kicking off this workflow. It's sending me a simple notification. That's nothing obviously required. That's just for my convenience to know something has been submitted. And then it's getting the file properties. And the real quote unquote, magic here is you could see is uploading it to a web-based service by the name of Verify. So we have an account with Verify. It's submitting that invoice to this cloud-based tool and getting certain content that I care about, right? Obviously, there was a lot of fields, if you recall, but I really only care about certain ones. So I'm gonna get out of the edit mode and look at the one that we just did 4 minutes ago and see the results, right? So here you can see, here's the execution path of this workflow. And if I go into the upload to verify, you can see here's my file that I uploaded. And the response is the data that went right back into that library, right? So in fact, I take that information and I update the file properties back in the SharePoint library. So as simple as this is, it's really powerful. I mean, you could use it for invoices, you could use it for contracts, you could use it for anything that you're uploading. Because now I have data that was previously buried in an image in a digital format by nature of it being submitted to a cloud-based OCR tool. So let's talk about where we go from there, right? So now I've submitted it. It's wrote this information back, and I have key data, right? And this key data, from an invoice automation perspective, is golden because now it could be used for workflow and account assignments and things like that that are ultimately needed to take this invoice, potentially match it to a PO even, and submit it to an ERP system for payment. So I will show that, but before I do that, you could also, let's talk about different submission methods, right? So we did a simple upload, but of course vendors aren't going to upload this invoice for me. They are probably going to email it to me. So I have another workflow here that takes this email to a accounts payable account. So our inbox, so I have ap@dynamicpoint.com. I'm going to pretend to be a vendor here, and I'm going to go ahead and submit my Acme invoice. And by sending this, it is using another workflow, right? So I have another one in here that's based off of an email trigger as opposed to a file. So this one right here. And what you're going to see on this one that the action is when an email is received. So on new email to this AP automation folder, then it's going to move it to that library, right? So let's go ahead and go back into that library. And it may take a minute or two, so we don't have to wait for it. Oh, there it is. That was pretty fast, right? So here's the one that just got submitted via email. And the exact same thing is going to happen on it, right? It's going to be submitted to OCR, and then I have the results of them. Okay, so all of that is talking about, just getting this data in. So let's go ahead and go back to our PowerPoint and move forward here. So the OCR integration, just to recap right there, I happen to use a third-party product, and the document library here is serving as my repository. So this is using a SharePoint document library. But, OCR is very, numerous as far as the tools out there. So you can most certainly use a legacy on-premise product. Microsoft AI offers OCR. On the App Store, there's several other tools too. So, with Power Automate, I could call almost any workflow, or I'm sorry, OCR tool, and really it comes down to which one works best for me, right? If there's a need for doing zonal OCR templates, then I would probably leverage one that uses more of the template method as opposed to mine, which was more of the machine learning. I didn't have to create a template. I just gave it an invoice and then it did the rest from there. Okay, so again, this is all sort of in this first step here, right? Where this is all in this first step of invoice receipt. And then, what our app does is sort of takes it over from there, and then we apply templates as well as PO matching. We've integrated it with workflow, and then our app also does this third and final step here of bringing it into the ERP system. So this first step by itself, it's still very powerful, right? Because even if I was just receiving these manually or via paper or via email, that method of receiving them in a central repository and performing OCR, and then I could even do a simple workflow on that library for review and approval is, obviously much better than nothing. But what our app does is then takes that from there and continues it forward. And we could show you that really quick. So if I were to go into the app, right, so all those that are coming into that library, they ultimately get, based off of a template and what we call a trigger, they get brought right here into our application. And now we've combined, the results of OCR, which you could see has populated various fields. So I could take the data here from what OCR was able to capture, the dates, the amounts, etc. And then I could begin doing things like applying templates, right? And templates can include such things as GL distributions. So maybe if I'm always working with a given vendor, I want to go ahead and default such things as departments and expense types. Or if I'm doing PO matching, maybe I want to bring in PO items from a purchase order that match what OCR was able to extrapolate from that image. In addition here, we're also doing validation with the ERP. So you can see here it's saying it's a duplicate. Reason being is I submit the same test invoices quite often. So we could put in our date here, 2022, maybe update the date here so it doesn't hit a close period, and update it, and you'll see that this invoice is now going to pass the check. In other words, the warning messages are gone. All right, so I received it, the OCR came in, and now I have this whole dashboard for bringing in more of the accounting features, such as account assignment, as well as kicking off a workflow review and approval. So if I click the submit button here, it's going to actually use my department assignment to assign this to a manager for review and approval. So that manager will receive notifications either via their phone or email notifications saying that they have a new invoice to review and approve. So that should come in pretty quick here. Sometimes it takes a second. Oh, there it is. I think I hear it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So now I have a new invoice that's ready to review and approve. Again, it's showing me the results of OCR. I have the scan invoice right here that I could obviously take a look at, and then I can approve or reject it. If I need to edit this, I also have an edit button to edit the assignments as it's going through the workflow. I could say this looks good. And then of course, if there was additional steps from a workflow perspective, this invoice would continue to be routed through it. And upon the final step is when we all create that invoice in the accounting system. So if I went back to my dashboard, you can actually see that invoice that I was previously working on is gone. It's not really gone, it's just being filtered out. So if I clear my filter here, you can see it's a status of submitted. And in addition to capturing the notes that I entered, so that was my reviewer notes, we have an audit log of each step in the workflow, as well as we are showing the ERP details of the transaction that was just integrated with the ERP. So you can see it started from a simple OCR process and extrapolation of that key data using a cloud-based OCR. And then the app is, of course, adding more of that accounting, data processing, PO matching, as well as integration with workflow, as well as ultimate integration with the ERP to bring that transaction in a real-time fashion. So I see we're just about at time here. So I'll wrap it up. As far as what we're trying to accomplish here from the approach, if you look at the things that go into this aspect of invoice automation, we focused a lot on this OCR one. SharePoint was serving as our repository for all these invoices coming in. We also did a simple workflow as well as brought that into an ERP. Really, so much of this is being provided by tools that our customers already own, right? All of this comes with Office 365. We're adding our app to this picture, and then that is enabling us to provide all of this functionality, hopefully at a much more competitive price than our competitors, because again, we're using what their customers have already purchased from Microsoft. So according to my watch here, I'm right at the half an hour. So thank you everyone so much for joining. I will send a copy of this recording out in case anyone is interested. Otherwise, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for your time. Bye now.